Hey guys, welcome to my channel. So today I have some DIY fails, but also how I fix them. DIYs don't always work out, and today I'm going to show you a couple of my projects that didn't really work out how I thought they were going to, but how I ended up changing my plan and fixing it so that it all worked out. We're dyeing fabric, we're painting an old chair, and we are revamping an old lamp that I thrifted. So let's get into those DIY fails. A while back, I tried to cover a thrifted lamp in air dry clay. I tried so many things, but the clay just kept cracking and falling off, so I'm just gonna take the clay off, clean it up, and try again. I thought the leftover clay was such a beautiful aesthetic, so if anyone has any ideas on what I can use these leftover clay pieces for, drop your ideas below. I've been seeing round rattan lamps quite a lot lately, and my lamp just happened to have the perfect structure to create a similar one. I have this roll of raffia in my stash, which I'll link below for you guys. What I'm doing is tying the raffia to one of the bars and then just weaving it around the lamp base. I'm taking the raffia over and around one bar and then under and around the next bar. And then you just repeat that process and go over and around and then under and around. A tip for when you're working with large amounts of yarn or cording or whatever you're using is to gather the material in your hand by creating two loops, one at the top and one at the bottom. Once you have all the material gathered, you can put an elastic over it. I'm just using a scrunchie because that's what I had on hand. And then all your material is together in one place. It won't get tangled, and it ends up being faster because you can pull the material through all at once. To finish off the base, I hot glued the raffia to the inside of one of the bars. Then I took a new piece of raffia and wound that around the stem, hot gluing as I went. I wanted to make my lamp a bit more boho, so I decided to add tassels to the bottom of the lampshade. To make my tassel, I wrapped a piece of yarn around 3 of my fingers about 20 times. I then took a small piece of yarn and tied it at the top of my loop. I then took another piece of yarn and tied it around the loops about 1/3 of the way down from the top. Then you cut the loops at the bottom. I took another tassel to compare lengths and cut the bottom strings until they looked even. Then you just repeat that process a million more times, or in my case, about 40. Okay, pro tip. So there is a string on the outside of your yarn, right? But also there's a string on the inside of your yarn. And so you just kind of have to put your finger in there, fish around for it and find it. But once you find it, then you can just keep on pulling your yarn. You don't have to worry about the yarn rolling across the floor or getting tangled. You just keep on pulling it. Now I'm just taking some hot glue and attaching the tassels to the inside of the lampshade. Once I got all the tassels attached, I went through and applied hot glue to the top of the strings to make the tassels more secure. And then I used some scissors to cut off the excess strings. So I felt like I needed a border around the bottom of the lampshade, so I cut 3 pieces of yarn and braided them together. It helps if you tape the strings down while you're braiding them so they don't move. When measuring how long to cut the strings, I wrapped the string around the lampshade twice. I did this because when you're braiding, your finished product will be shorter than your beginning material. I then hot glue the braid to the bottom edge of the lampshade. So I got this cool modern red chair from my parents' house. It used to be my brother's room, but now it just doesn't match any of the decor, so I'm going to try to paint it. I cleaned it off, and then I found this leather paint on Amazon that I wanted to try out. The chair is pleather, but I figured the paint would still work really well. And the paint does work really well, but I forgot to look at the size of the paint I was buying, and it was a lot smaller than I thought it would be. How many of you guys have bought something from Amazon without looking at the dimensions? Anyway, it was going to cost way more than I wanted to spend to get more, so I decided to try another method. Now, I've seen other YouTubers, DIY Danny and Lone Fox, paint fabric chairs to look like leather, so I figured I'd try the same technique. I went to Lowe's and got a sample size of interior paint, I'll link the color below, and I mixed it with fabric softener in a 1-to-1 ratio. I did 3 tablespoons of paint and 3 tablespoons of fabric softener and then mixed them together, and I ended up doing 2 coats of this on the top of the leather paint. I then covered the painted parts of the chair with garbage bags and painter's tape and sprayed the metal legs with a matte black spray paint. I got this bright orange blanket. I bought it online at Target, and then when it arrived, it was just way too bright for me. So I figured, why not repurpose it? I couldn't take it back. I figured, let's try and re-dye it. Because it's a synthetic fabric, I can't take the color away, so I'm just gonna have to try and color on top of it. So we're gonna see how that turns out, because I don't know, I've never dyed fabric before, so we'll see. Okay, so my blanket's made out of synthetic fiber. It's 100% polyester. So I have to use the RIT Dye More. So they have RIT Original, where you can use on most fabrics, but anything that's synthetic, you have to use RIT Dye More. RIT's website is super cool. You can go there and there's a page that you can go to, and it has a list of just all the different color variations that you can make with their dyes. And there's just hundreds and hundreds of options. It's really cool. So I went onto their website and looked up the RIT Dye More color variations, and I found this really cool, like, dark foresty green color, and it said to use 3 of these in the peacock green and 1 of the dark graphite. Why did I think that was gonna work? Okay guys, look at this color that it turned out. Yuck. Ugh. I'm not loving it, guys. I don't love it. It's kind of a gross brown color. So my one suggestion for you guys, if you are planning on dyeing some fabric, especially if it's already colored fabric and especially if it's synthetic, don't change the color story. If it's orange, keep it in that red, orange color area. Don't try and go on the opposite color wheel and dye it green or blue. Don't do that. It's not gonna work. The process of dyeing synthetic fabric is pretty simple. You do have to dye synthetic fabrics on the stove because it has to consistently be at an almost boiling point the entire time to achieve the desired effect. So once your water is almost boiling, you can put in your dye and stir it up. You can then put your fabric in. Just make sure you pre-wet your fabric before putting it in your dye to promote even dyeing. The second time I dyed the blanket, I only used 2 bottles of the graphite dye. The first 10 minutes are the most crucial. During this time, stir your fabric, move it around. I found it easiest to use tongs to grab part of the fabric and gradually rotate it in the pot. After those 10 minutes, you can leave it and just stir it every once in a while. When I first dyed my blanket, I left it in for an hour, and the second time I left it in for 30 minutes. It is recommended to leave synthetic fabric in the dye for at least 30 minutes. I enlisted my amazing husband to help me pour the dye out into the sink. RIT dye is safe for your sink drain, so there's nothing to worry about there. Once my blanket was in the sink, I rinsed it with warm water and then gradually to cold water until the water was clear. I then popped it into my washing machine and dried it according to the blanket's instructions. The color does become lighter when dried, so just be aware of that. Then, to spruce up the blanket a bit, I added white tassels using yarn from my stash. I used a needle and thread to attach the tassels to the blanket, tying it off with a double knot and then trimming the ends. I ended up spacing them about 4 inches apart. which project was your favorite down below. I think my favorite was the lamp, honestly. The lamp and then the chair. The blanket didn't turn out quite how I wanted it still at the end, but we made it work. So I know it's a little discouraging when your DIY projects don't turn out the way that you hoped they would, but don't lose hope. You can always repurpose them, re-DIY. Just keep doing it again, over and over again. Guys, thank you so much for watching my videos. I so deeply appreciate all of your views and your comments and your likes and your subscriptions. You're subscribing. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a like below. Subscribe to my channel so that you can see the next time I post a video. I've got some really great stuff coming out for you guys. And I'll see you guys later.